In our world today, equality is something that is still being searched for on a global scale. This is including everything from the equality between genders, the wage gap, races, and even sexuality. Here in America, it's the same thing. We're still looking for equality, but we haven't quite perfected it. However, a lot of people actually forget a law that was created in 1972 called Title IX. It declared that no person on the basis of sex shall be discriminated against at any education program that is receiving any federal funding. So initially, when it was passed in 1972, it was followed by a lot of confusion and lawsuits because something like this had never been done before, so many women took advantage of the general wording and actually sued their institution, claiming that they had been discriminated against on the basis of sex when they compared the difference between the treatment of men's athletic teams and women's. It wasn't until the policy interpretation in 1979 when the law declared that the gaps in treatment between teams were acceptable as long as they weren't based on sex. So it was now based on ratios. So if a student population was 60% male and 40% female, then the varsity athletes had to total 60% male and 40% female. The thing is, most colleges didn't have any women's varsity athletic programs, so they had to make a lot of tough choices. This could include either shelling out the money to fund half a dozen women's teams to even out the ratios, but in most cases, a lot of colleges had to actually cut a lot of the men's athletic teams. None of these included football or basketball, which were the two powerhouse sports, but often included tennis, swimming, and archery. There was actually a huge complaint about the men about the loss of teams, claiming that future Olympians were missing out on their opportunities as a result of Title IX. However, this had the largest effect on females, and here at Stonehill, things weren't so dramatic, actually. The sports culture was changed in a productive way because we were able to grow with the law and change through it, rather than drastically remaking everything that had already been done. So at this time, Stonehill only had one athletic varsity team, and that was men's basketball. So in 1972, right after the law, the school promptly hired Paula Sullivan. She was a recent graduate from Bridgewater State and started with a fresh group of girls, a new program, and a lot of hope. So they had a lot of support from the men at the school, but they still had a lot of handicaps to overcome. For example, the school only provided money for referees and a bus to get to their away games. They had to fundraise for their own uniforms that first year. They also could only practice in an elementary school down the road rather than the court on campus like the men were able to do. Father Mark Cregan, actually, when he was a student here, drove the bus to their away games. And at this time, they were forced to play whoever they could find because the NCAA didn't yet recognize women as a varsity sport. So they would play schools who today would be considered D1, D2, and D3. So when their program was initially created, they had a lot of male support. This included Tom Folliard. He was the athletic director and the men's basketball coach at the time, and he also fought for the equality between his men's teams and Paula's women. By the time Lori Dunn arrived in 1980, the program had come a long way. She was actually able to play softball and basketball here at Stonehill on a partial scholarship, and without that scholarship, she wouldn't have been able to attend this school. And the fact that she was even offered a scholarship was a huge change compared to where the program had begun 10 years ago. She was also very happy with the progress that it had made, stating that she was happy to see the college implementing changes to provide women athletes to have the same conditions that the men's program had had this whole time. She also mentioned how her peers were incredibly supportive, went to all their home and away games, and while the men of the campus and the male athletes were initially stereotypical and negative of the female athletes, once they had met each other individually and grown to know each other, they came to respect them at least for their similar love of the sport. So Stonehill still hasn't achieved gender equity and is not in compliance with Title IX today. The NCAA has created a 3-prong test to measure the compliance, and schools have to meet at least one of these prongs. So the first prong is about equal proportions. So Stonehill is 60% female, 40% male, and Title IX declares that there has to be an equal proportion of varsity athletes. So 60% of the varsity athletes should be female, 40% male. However, at Stonehill, it's actually 43 to 57 ratio of females to males, so that's completely out of whack, and we're not in compliance with Title IX in that aspect. When talking to Cindy McDonald, she's on the gender equity board here at Stonehill, she told me that Stonehill is actually 200 opportunities out of whack between the females and the males. So what that means is, while there can be multiple opportunities, one female can use up multiple. So one girl, for example, is currently at Stonehill is taking 3 opportunities by playing indoor track, outdoor track, and track and field. So that's just one example to see how one person can take up a huge chunk, but we're still out of balance. For the second prong, showing growth, history has to provide both a past experience of showing that they have helped grow programs for the underrepresented sex, but also show that they're still doing it today. While we can prove that we have created lots of female teams, Stonehill has not done anything since 1996 and the addition of the women's lacrosse team. For the third prong, Stonehill needs to meet the interests and the needs of the student body. This is how a lot of schools actually prove that they're in compliance with Title IX, and they claim that because no students are knocking on their doors asking for a female rowing team or something like that, that there must not be any interest in another female varsity team. Well, 3 years ago at Stonehill, there was a survey to see if there was any interest in an additional female team, and it found that there was, even though the survey didn't even include incoming students and applicants. So again, Stonehill is not in compliance with Title IX. However, they are doing everything that they can because Title IX focuses on 3 different things, and that's the participation, scholarships, and the laundry list, which includes everything from the coach's salary to the equipment to practice times. So this is an example of the participation. As you can see, the men's teams hugely outnumber the women's, even though we have 11 female varsity teams here at Stonehill and only 9 men's. The football team actually is a huge chunk of this, but still we're not in proportion, and if we did add another female team, that would help balance it. The next part in scholarships, again, you can see it's completely flip-flopped, but the good news is there is a 3-year plan in progress right now to help reverse that trend so that female athletes can actually get the money that they deserve. For the last part, the laundry list, this is including coaches' salaries. Again, part of the 3-year trend is to help to reverse this. But again, you can see that the men's teams hugely outnumber the women's, even in the assistant coaching. Another part of the laundry list is the locker rooms and availability to equipment, and with the addition to the new sports complex, all of the teams except for basketball and volleyball will be in here, so they will have the same locker conditions, the same equipment, and this will be a huge step for Stonehill in that aspect. As to the future, there will be another survey given out in the spring of 2015 coming up, and this will actually include incoming students to see if there is interest and the skill and ability to help build another female team here at Stonehill. So, all in all, the sports culture is compiled of many different factors. It includes the athletes, the fans, the coaches, the program itself, and it's really whatever the school can put into it. And without Title IX, I've found in my research that this would be a completely different place. It would not be equal, it would be completely hierarchical in its athletics, and Title IX has allowed the Stonehill program to really grow, and with it, the sports culture. While this law has finally allowed women to participate equally in athletics, I have found that it was certain individuals at Stonehill who really created a positive athletic community. When talking to Lori Dunn, she said that Title IX was a catalyst, but leadership helped shape the sports culture today. And she gave a lot of this credit to Paula Sullivan. She was a coach for 25 years. After that, she was the athletic director. She really paved the way for women in sports here at campus, and she was recently celebrated for her 43 years of hard work that she's put into Stonehill, which she called a labor of love. And of course, Paula will take absolutely no credit. She gives a lot of it to individuals like Tom Folliard, the men's athletic director of 1972 and the men's basketball coach at the time, because he really did fight for equality between the two first varsity teams here at Stonehill. She also gives a lot of credit to our current president, Father John Denning, and our previous president, Father Cregan. It was them who really embraced the athletic programs and recognized the importance of it and helped develop Stonehill varsity athletics to where they are today. Title IX was something that changed the sports culture of colleges around the nation, but certain individuals at Stonehill made sure that these changes were for the better.